where the Liberal MP for Wentworth, Dave Sharma, has managed to make contact with us. Good to talk to you, Dave. I don't know whether you've been able to catch up with my interview just on an hour ago with Pauline Hanson, but she's saying with all this controversy about Chinese political interference, with other controversies in the past such as leasing the port of Darwin and a lot of the foreign investment decisions here, she says China is fixing to move its people here. What do you think about that sort of rhetoric?
Look, I think that drastically over-dramatises things, and I think we need to be careful here that, you know, these are serious allegations that have been made in the last few days. They certainly warrant investigation and, you know, the involvement of our intelligence agencies. But I think it's also important, you know, not to overreact or overstate, you know, China's aims or ambitions in this area. We've got a relationship with them. It's been a mutually beneficial relationship over, you know, many years since China opened up in the 1970s. And, you know, we need to find a way to work with them, and we will and we should. But it's, you know, I think we need to be careful not to overmake the case for what's going on.
Yeah, we know what's happening in the public debate, and certainly others will be saying what you're saying, just to keep the debate calm and rational. We know also at the very top level that Scott Morrison has not been invited to Beijing. There's a bit of a freeze on. We've had a couple of government MPs had their visas rejected for going for visits to China. What would be happening now at the diplomatic level? What would our diplomats be doing to try and repair the relationship with Beijing?
Well, look, I think, you know, firstly, I wouldn't say the onus is necessarily on us to repair the relationship. I mean, you know, if China's been unhappy about the actions we've taken in defence of our sovereignty, things like, you know, our decisions about the 5G telecommunications network or our foreign interference laws, well, those aren't decisions that we're going to revoke. They're about, you know, defending and defining Australia's core interests. And I think what our diplomats would be doing would be saying to China, you know, we're prepared to have a healthy and productive relationship, but certain things about our sovereignty are non-negotiable, just as certain things for China are red line issues that we respect. We expect the same from them.
That's a key point, isn't it? And it's a bit of a contrast, really, from what we've heard from Paul Keating last week. I mean, we ought to be upfront. We will stand up for our national interest, just as we would know and expect China to stand up for its national interests.
Look, that's exactly right. And I think where some of the criticisms, you know, come from, I think they're probably well meant, but they date back to a China that's fundamentally different to the China of today. They date, you know, this is China pre-2012, pre-President Xi Jinping, a less assertive China, one that was more focused on its own development, less focused on, you know, expanding and extending its power abroad. So we're dealing with quite a different China, certainly to when Paul Keating was Prime Minister, but even to when John Howard was the Prime Minister. China has changed dramatically in the last, you know, 6 or 7 years in terms of the role it seeks to play in affairs beyond its borders. And this is why we're having some of the tensions we are having in managing this relationship.
Now, we know Labor's had strife with Audi bags stashed full of cash, with Sam Dastyari leaving politics. But all this latest controversy tends to focus on a Liberal operative who ended up dead. And surely this puts more pressure on Gladys Liu, your own Liberal colleague, member for Chisholm. There's more pressure on her to come out and give a detailed statement about her links and the organisations she's been part of.
Look, I don't buy that. I mean, I think Gladys has been, you know, upfront and clear and offered explanations. Of course, you'd expect someone who's, you know, born in Hong Kong, ethnically Chinese, to have links with Chinese community organisations, as she had and as she's had declared. And you wouldn't necessarily expect people like that to know what lies behind all these organisations. I mean, this is what our intelligence service is for and our intelligence agencies are for. You obviously do as much diligence as you can as a politician and an MP and seek to identify them. But I can't see anyone who's made the case, as they did with Sam Dastyari, that Gladys is somehow being compromised by her links to these organisations. Sam Dastyari, it was a pretty clear case that he was arguing against his own party's positions on fundamental issues of national interest to Australia in some sort of exchange with agents of Chinese influence.
It seems odd that any foreign organisation would try and recruit someone and run them as a candidate, because you've got so many hurdles to get over. You've got to get them pre-selected, you've got to get them elected, you've got to get them into Parliament. It's much simpler to duchess and cultivate people who are already in Parliament, as we saw with Sam Dastyari.
Look, I mean, I think that's a fair point to make. You know, these allegations are obviously they're very serious, but the person who could tell us most about them is unfortunately no longer with us. So I think intelligence agencies should investigate, and ASIO has said it is. But I'd just be a little cautious. You know, I've read what's in the media as well, but as is often the way, we don't know the whole story here, and I'd be cautious not to overinterpret what's been reported until we have more of the facts.
Indeed, we'd love to know all the facts, and maybe one day we'll know more. We may never know all of them, though. Thanks so much for joining us, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Chris.